Benjamin Netanyahu calling in the big guns, the Israeli prime minister narrowly avoiding going to trial this week on corruption charges after Trump weighed in, suggesting American aid could hang in the balance if it proceeds.
In a lengthy post on Truth Social Saturday, Trump called Netanyahu a war hero and praised him for the attacks against Iran last week. He continued, writing in part, "Importantly, he is right now in the process of negotiating a deal with Hamas, which will include getting the hostages back. How is it possible that the Prime Minister of Israel can be forced to sit in a courtroom all day long over nothing? It is a political witch hunt, very similar to the witch hunt that I was forced to endure. It is insanity doing what the out-of-control prosecutors are doing to Bibi Netanyahu. The United States of America spends billions of dollars a year, far more than any other nation, protecting and supporting Israel. We are not going to stand for this."
Trump capped it off with a "let Bibi go, he's got a big job to do." A few hours after that post, the Jerusalem District Court, in which Netanyahu is charged, agreed to postpone the prime minister's trial and said Sunday that Netanyahu would not have to testify for the next 2 weeks due to diplomatic and national security interests. It came just 2 days after the judge in the case initially rejected Netanyahu's repeated requests to have the trial delayed.
In response, Netanyahu took to X to thank the president. He wrote, "Thank you again, Donald Trump. Together we will make the Middle East great again." Netanyahu is accused of accepting more than $200,000 from wealthy businessmen and granting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of regulatory benefits to a telecom owner in exchange for favorable news coverage.
The trial has been delayed for 4 years and led many critics of Netanyahu to accuse him of using his power to stall the case. So there are 3 dimensions here for us to look at. So first is what Netanyahu is doing, which he's been doing for a number of years, which is using war to delay these corruption trials. And that, I think, is problematic. Second is what Trump is doing by leveraging his influence and his popularity in Israel to affect the judicial process. Normatively, I think that's also very problematic. That's not a good precedent that we want to be sending. This is an issue for Israelis to be deciding on, not for the United States. But the third piece here is what Netanyahu and Trump might be seeking to do together. And that's where it gets interesting. So we know that Trump is a highly transactional politician in all respects, but definitely when it comes to foreign policy. And when you look at what happened with his support for the Iran bombings and now his support for delaying the corruption case, there's almost certainly something that Trump is getting in return. We know that the conflict in Gaza has been a mess and something that Trump has really sought to clean up. He's very frustrated that it's gone on as long as it has. And I believe that this is now an indication that perhaps there is some visibility into the Gaza conflict ending, or there being at least a ceasefire coming up soon. That's just my prediction based on my understanding of Trump's foreign policy. The other thing to potentially look for here is Netanyahu going to come to the United States for a potential meeting, a potential victory lap here. And if that happens, I think there might be an even larger announcement around Gaza. So for viewers who are at home wondering what's really going on here, know that when Trump is giving Netanyahu essentially a bear hug here, know that he's asking for things in return.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think you're probably right that when Trump says that they have to get the hostages back from Gaza, that he is hinting that there is some kind of deal that might be close to being reached, which is why he wants Netanyahu free for now. I do think it's interesting to look at their relationship compared to the first term with the second term. It's been decidedly less cozy, at least from the first few months of Trump's administration. Netanyahu apparently wanted to strike Iran back in April or May, and Trump said, no, you can only do it when I'm ready. And that was when he did it in June, and then Trump following up with a strike of his own. But Trump has to be very careful with his general relationship with Netanyahu, even if there have been reports about him being more skeptical of the Israeli prime minister and a bit suspicious about his motivations, and then being willing to negotiate directly with Hamas for the release of that American hostage. A lot of the Republican base, and Trump's base in particular, have similarly suspicious feelings about how much money the U.S. gives to Israel. How does this benefit American interests? Is Israel taking us for a ride and trying to draw us into a major war in the Middle East? And he should heed that, I think, when deciding how to proceed, specifically with the Iran situation and how much vocal support he does give to Netanyahu.
Yeah, I think Trump definitely needs to be careful about that. And a couple things here quickly. One is that there's an interesting coincidence that happened that if you look at what was happening in Israeli politics just before October 7th and before the Gaza war, then there were massive protests in the streets. Israel was extremely divided. People were calling for Netanyahu to step down and for these corruption charges to be properly heard. The Gaza war happens, and that all is put on the back burner. That is really problematic, and you always see this constant delay tactic that Netanyahu is using, and now Trump is aiding him in that, and I think that's very problematic. And it's part of the reason why I think war is so often used for unjust and wrong means, and Netanyahu, whose main goal has been self-preservation over the last, for most of his political career, he knows how to use war in his favor. The problem is that a lot of people get killed and hurt in the process.
I thought it was very strange that Mossad has such amazing intelligence capabilities that they were able to literally fly drones through bedroom windows to take out senior military leaders with the Iranian government, and able to tell us exactly how far down in the ground Fordo was and how many scientists were working there and how much uranium had been enriched, and yet they didn't see a bunch of paragliders planning to come across into the country on October 7th.
Right. That to me is extremely questionable, to say the least, for anyone who's been to Israel, and I have, and I've been part of some of the official tours there where you really assess not only what's happening on the ground, but also the security setup that's in the country. Not a lot of things happen unplanned there when it comes to security, especially when you're talking about the Gaza border. I have friends who have crossed that border multiple times, people who do that on a daily basis prior to October 7th. This is not a place where things are just crossing the border without being extremely vetted. So to me, it's extremely questionable. Going back to the Trump part of the story, I think, again, he's very transactional. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. I do think that you're right that his relationship with Netanyahu has been maybe less cozy in this cycle. And I think it's partly because that there's been a real MAGA interest in preventing foreign interventions, and Trump is kind of stuck between Netanyahu and his base on that. Alligator Alcatraz, DHS has a new plan to house migrants. We'll tell you more next.